So right now I'm starting out in Launchpad, which for me will look a little different than for you. But the big thing is you're looking for this icon for Office 365. So I've logged into Launchpad. I then click on the Office 365, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this green icon with an X on the left side of the screen. That will open up Microsoft Excel. And I'm going to open a new blank workbook. So to make this easier to use, I'm going to start out by pointing out that I'm going to work, in my case, with the pine wood. So I'll click right here and I'll type in pine. And then according to the directions, I want a table which has table numbers. It has the volume as the independent variable. It has the mass as the dependent variable. And then I also want the density. So I'm going to type those in with their units as column headers. And right now you can see that I have a little bit of an issue because it's difficult to see all of my column header. So I'm going to go up to right in between the B and the C, and you can see as I'm in between those two letters, I get that double-sided arrow. If I click, then I can pull that column over and make it wide enough to see the entire thing. So now I know there are 7 groups in my classes, so I'll go ahead and go down, and I'll also put in a 0 group. So now I'm going to use my first period data, and I'm going to start typing in my volumes, which should all have 1 decimal place on it. So you can see here I'm typing in 40.0, but when I go down, Excel drops that 0 because it doesn't realize that that is a significant digit. So here in a minute, we'll go ahead and fix that, but first let's go ahead and put all of the numbers into the data, including the very important 0 point. If something doesn't have any mass, it can't take up any space. So let's fix this. I'm going to click in the box with the 9.5 and then just hold down the mouse and highlight all of these numbers. I'm going to go up to the top, and I notice next to this there is a button to increase the decimal. So I'll increase the decimal. Now that's got too many decimal places, so I'm going to decrease so that I get 1 decimal place. There are other ways to do it, but this is probably the fastest one. So now I'm going to go ahead and put in my masses. Do the same thing. I'm just typing straight down the column. And of course, I'll also have a 0 here. So now I've got the volume and the mass. I can easily calculate the densities and type them into the box here, but I can actually do this faster. So I'm going to click in the box next to the numbers under the density. I'm going to type an equal sign. Then I'm going to click on the first mass, which I need to divide by the volume that goes with it. So then I'll click on the volume. So you can see now the blue cell is on the top and the red cell is on the bottom. And when I hit enter, it will calculate it for me. Now I can do that over and over and over, or I can notice right here in the bottom right corner of this box, there's a little green square. If I click on that green square and drag down all my numbers, it will go ahead and calculate them for me. But this is way too many significant digits. I really should not have more than 3 for most of these. So I'm going to go ahead, go back up to that decrease decimal, and I'm going to go ahead and just go down to 3 significant digits across the board. So all of this is going to be exactly what I need to have for the poplar also. So I'm going to click, drag, and highlight, hit copy, come over a couple rows, and hit paste. See, I'm going to need to adjust these column sizes again. And now instead of pine, in my classes we used poplar. You might have used spruce or something else. Again, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups plus our 0. And we can go ahead and enter this information as well. So volumes first. And again, you'll see we are going to have to adjust our significant digits here. Apparently had a group of very accurate people here, so I'm going to highlight these, increase the decimal, and decrease so I have 0.0 on the end here. And then I'll go ahead and type in my masses. Just hitting the down arrow after I finish typing to be able to move to the next box. And we'll see here we do have the same issue where we lost a 0 because Excel doesn't understand significant digits. And we'll go ahead and complete this by doing the same thing we did before. I'll type in enter an equal sign, then I'll click on the mass, click a division, click on the density, hit enter, and then I'll be able to just grab that little green corner box and drag it down. If you drag it down into this box, it will complain about dividing by 0 because division by 0, of course, is an error in most calculators because it is an undefined answer. Oh, I didn't put that one in there. Well, easy to fix. Just go ahead and click on those. There we go. And again, I'll click, drag, and highlight. And we want to have 3 significant digits here, so I'll just click until we get to 3 significant digits. So now these tables could easily be copied and pasted either into a Microsoft Word document or a Google Doc. So what I'm going to do to make this easier to copy and paste is I'm going to take all of this table data, and to make it prettier, I'm going to go ahead and go up to the borders option and tell it to put the borders around it. So all the nice borders in there, now I can see them. Come over here and do the same here. I'll go up to the borders, make it look like a window pane. And then I'm going to click and highlight this, and I'm going to copy it. So I can right click and copy, or I can use Control C. Then you can see here I have a lab report started. I've got my data table. I've got my results for my table. But now I'm going to say that I want to do the class results for, in this case, I had treated pine. Now I can right click and paste, and it put that table right in. So now I could do my class results for poplar wood. Obviously you would use whatever your teacher used. And I would go into the book again, click and drag, holding down the mouse button. Then I would right click, copy, go back to my Google Doc, and Control V, paste. Now, one thing I do not like about this right now is that I have a break across a page. That's going to go away because I am going to put in a graph here. But if it does that, you can always use Control and Enter to put in a page break or use a couple of returns to get things on one page, because you never want to have a table like this where it's split across 2 pages. You could also consider putting it together as 2 columns on that page if you're aware of how to format that. But since it's being turned in online, there's no real reason to worry too much about space. And then of course down here, this would be where I would put my conclusion, where I'm discussing whether density is intensive or extensive. So let's go back to Excel and look at making a graph. The two columns I want to worry about are the volume and the mass. So I'm going to click and hold down the mouse and highlight those. Then I'm going to go up to Insert, and I'm going to insert a chart. Now I want to insert a scatter chart, so if it doesn't pop up, click on the down arrow and come down here to Scatter. Okay. So now I have a graph of my pine data, but I'm missing a few things. So I go to the chart menu, which I'm already in right now. I can see one, I would need a chart title. Let's put a chart title at the top, and we're going to edit that chart title. This would be treated pine, and it is mass versus volume. Okay, so we put in a descriptive title. I'm also going to tell it to turn off the legend because that's just taking up space. I'm also going to need my axis title. So my x-axis is my horizontal axis. So my x-axis here is my independent variable, or volume, which is in milliliters. Now that's displayed down there. And if I go to the vertical axis title, the best looking one is to use the rotated title. And my y variable was the mass, which is in grams. So now I have a title, I have my axis labels. So the other thing I want to do is I want to put a trend line and get an equation. To do that, I'm going to go to the Format menu, and I'm going to look at the Series options. If I open the Series option, you'll see there is an option for a trend line. So we're going to turn that on. That'll put a line through my data. And then I'll scroll down a little farther, and I will display the equation and the R-squared value. So I would love to be able to move that around, but it's being a bit cranky right now, so we will deal with it where it is. So the two things to think about here. The R-squared value is not a part of the equation of the line. What it's doing is it's telling me how well my numbers actually correspond to a mathematically perfect line. A mathematically perfect line has an R-squared value of 1. So mine is over 0.9. So it tells me that this data fits well to a linear data set. The other thing I will note is that the slope of this line is very important. If I think about what slope is, it's the change in y. Well, my y value is grams divided by the change in x, and my x is in milliliters. So if I think about what the units on my slope would be, that ought to look pretty familiar. It's a number of grams divided by a number of milliliters. Isn't that just the density? So the slope of this line is the average density of my data set. And that allows me to think about whether with a linear data set, if the slope of that line should ever change, whether my number is very small or whether my number is very big, the slope is still the slope of a linear data set. So that should help you think about whether density is an intensive property or an extensive property. To get these graphs into my report, I just click on it, right click and copy, go over to my report, go to the graph section, and I can paste that in. Just use Control V or right click and paste. This is just the treated pine, so I will need to do the same steps for the poplar data, so I would highlight the volume and mass data, go up to Insert, and insert a scatter plot. So I'll get this a little out of the way here. And we would do the same thing here where we would change the title. That's not a very descriptive title. So this is poplar, mass versus volume. We would go to the axis titles again. It's going to have to think for just a second. But we'll edit our axis titles using the same idea. We'll get to the series menu to put a trend line in and the equations from the format menu, just like we did in the first part of this video.